Hello, fellow glue sniffers and sprue snippers. It's Bob. You know me as Darklyn on the forums, and welcome to Blitzkrieg Modelworks. A little bit of background about myself. I had built scale models, primarily 1/35th armor and science fiction, for about 20 some odd years. Took a 9-year hiatus while I delved into another hobby, which ended up turning into a business. And finally had enough time to start getting back into this and found myself very rusty. Also found that there was a lot of people that I knew who also were doing scale models with varying levels of experience. Some of them, after seeing my shop and some of my previous work, which I am very humble to say I am nowhere near where I used to be skill level wise. It's going to take quite a bit to get back to that. But many people were asking, you know, why don't you do a video showing basic tools that you need to get started, and then do a basic kit for people and show some basic stuff to get going. Now, basic for one group of people is very different for basic for another, and my skills and techniques are pretty much specific to armor and science fiction. There is some crossover to, I know, aircraft and to ships. Cars are kind of a unique thing on their own because they tend to be very, very clean, although I do know some people who build, you know, old cars, junkyard cars, things like that, so a lot of those techniques are the same as armor. But we'll focus mostly on armor techniques. For tools, what you bare bones need to get going is very, very little. You need a knife. You need, I guess you don't need, but it's really advantageous to have a pair of cutters to take parts off the trees. You can use the knife for that, but these save your blades, which can get very expensive. You need sanding devices of some type, whether it be a actual modeling sanding stick with replaceable, spring-loaded with replaceable belts, or you just go to the ladies' cosmetic section and you get fingernail file sanders. You can get these in a variety of grits. You need some putty, you need glues, but you don't need a lot. You can get by with some very, very simplistic stuff. What I'm going to do is show you a lot of different options. With some of these options come different costs. If you're just getting started, keep it simple. Don't go too hog wild. Don't let the guys at the hobby shop or, you know, some of the high-end model builders tell you, oh, you need this, oh, you need that. Really, you don't. It's not rocket science. Everybody starts from scratch. Everybody starts at square one, and then as they learn, as they build their skills, as they have their own techniques, they do their own thing. So the first thing we're going to get into is the hobby knife. This is the typical knife that most modelers get started with. This is an X-Acto. This was actually, I've had this since I was a teenager. I'm in my late 40s now. Great knife, very sharp, horrifically pointy, which is why there is a piece of sprue in some very old masking tape. That is to prevent it from rolling off the bench. From personal experience, I know what it's like to have one roll off the bench and you instinctively go to grab it. Not a good idea. So if you start with one of these are very inexpensive. You can get these for like maybe 10 bucks. Do this little mod to make sure it doesn't go anywhere on you. You can use a variety of blades. They are replaceable. They usually come in a tube or a pack, or you can get big boxes. They do dull fairly quickly. You can resharpen them depending on how much you pay or your sharpening skills. It may not be worth it. I still use these from time to time, but I have gone up into a different type of knife. I actually use scalpel blades. Now, you can, if I can find that old one, you can use actual scalpel handles. I started with these back in the 1990s when I started switching over from hobby-based stuff to industrial or other use items. There was a few of us that were switching over to scalpels, and it's okay. I don't find it very comfortable. It's very flat, very medical. It is, again, pretty cheap. I picked this up at a flea market. I think there was a box of them for a couple of bucks, and they just take a standard standard scalpel blade, Again, different profiles. You can get curves. This is a number 15. This is a number 11. This is, I believe, a number 12. Not a lot of use for this for most people. It worked well, but like I said, the handle wasn't very comfortable. And then I found a company called Lee Valley Tools here in Canada. They sell a unit made by Veritas. Very nice unit, you know, very beefy, fits good in the hand, nice ferrule, doesn't roll off too easily. This is a newer version. The older versions didn't have this. Newer versions have blade storage. It's a magnet inside, so it'll pull a blade out for you if you like. These are not inexpensive. These are about $30 off the top of my head, plus taxes and shipping from wherever you are, but Lee Valley or all over Canada. Blades, again, I'm using number 15 scalpel blade. In this one I'm actually using a blade that Olfa produce, the Olfa art knife. It's just called the art knife as far as I know. I don't know if you can actually see that. It comes in like a pack of 100. Has a spot for you to put the worn out blades into so you don't cut yourself or cut through your garbage bags. These work very well. Again, you can sharpen these if you like. How well depends on your skills and what you use. They work pretty well. We'll go on to glues. That is the other most important thing you'll need. Now, a lot of people will see tube glue. You can use it. I tell people to avoid the stuff like the plague. It's horrible, it's gooey, it's messy. Most people think that it's like stick 'em, the more you use the better it works, and that's not how it works at all. You want to go with a liquid glue. I don't know if you can see how moving that around in there. This is just standard Testors plastic cement. It's the staple of modelers all over. It's a fairly slow setting glue, but it's basically, this is what tube glue is, except tube glue has a polymer put in it to make it thick, so it'll come out of a tube and stay where you want. Whereas with liquid glue, you don't put it on the sides and then glue the two halves together. Typically what you're going to do is you're going to do something like you'll take these wheels and you'll stick them together, and you'll take a brush. I use like a size 0 artist brush. This is a cheap one from the dollar store, and I'll put this in and just dab, and it's done. Capillary action draws the glue into the seam, and you basically hold it until it sets up enough that the parts are going to come apart, and then you leave it. But again, this is a very slow setting glue. There's other glues out there that you can use. There's Tamiya Extra Thin. They make a thin as well. Very, very similar. Comes with a nice little applicator brush. Don't lose these. These are actually very nice. I'll probably save one of these to put Testors in. Testors comes with a brush that's like really big and coarse. The best thing you can do with that brush is take it out and throw it away. Switch to one something like this, about a size 0 artist brush. This is an actual artist brush, size 0. So that's about all you really need for that. The Tamiya stuff works really well. I've used it a little bit on some of these road wheels. Works really well. A glue that, it's not really a glue, it's more of a solvent, but it works really well as a glue that we've been using for years and years and years, is this stuff. It does not come in this bottle. It comes usually in a 1 liter container, metal container. MEK stands for mech, or methyl ethyl ketone. You can pick this up at most professional paint stores. It's used as a solvent for things like epoxies and fiberglasses, things of that nature. This stuff is so volatile and means it evaporates so quickly. You either have to load a brush up really hard with this, because usually by the time you dunk it in, you get it over, you have your parts lined up, most of it's gone already. It's that fast. A lot of times what I'll do with mech is, I actually bought one of these years ago. This is a glass syringe, and I think this is size G or size K needle, and I've taken the tip off of it, so there's no pointy at all on there. So when I go to glue, I'm not gouging the metal, or sorry, the plastic. And what you do is you just draw your your glue in, and just the heat from your hand will cause the MEK to start to evaporate inside, and it'll pressurize it, and a little drop will come out, and it'll just be drop, 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 drop. When you're done, shoot the rest back into the container, put it back in. You don't need these. It comes in really handy. I use it when I'm working in really tight spots. Usually I'll use the brush, though. It's, you load it up enough, and you kind of, if you have everything set up ahead of time, you can load, do your thing, put it aside, get your next part set up, load, do your thing, set it aside. Works pretty quickly that way. Another glue that some people like to use is super glue. You can get this in various consistencies. This one is a gap filling. I actually use this as a glue from time to time. This one is super thin. It's about as thin as the Tamiya Extra Thin. It's really thin. It goes everywhere if you don't control it. Usually you'll use like a toothpick or a pin or something as an applicator, so you have precise control. Not too good for plastic. There's better glues for plastic. But if you're using resin or photo etch later on, yes, you need this. Plastic glue does not work on resin. It does not work on photo etch. You have to use super glue on that stuff. Another glue that you can use, not so much with your plastic kits, but depending on what you're building, you may need to. I use Weld Bond. It's kind of like a heavy-duty white glue. You use white glues for clear parts. There are some glues that you can use for clear parts, but stuff like white glue, it doesn't cause the clear parts to become damaged. It doesn't cause them to haze or get that fog on them. If you're doing like cars, aircraft canopies, things like that, that's the kind of stuff you want to do. Even if you use super glue, you can get that haze on the parts, and once it's on, you can't get that off. It just is not going to work. From glue, then we go to putty. Now, certain things you can use for both, but to start with, tube putty. My favorite is Tamiya tube putty, the basic type. It's gray. It's very, very smooth consistency. It does shrink a little bit, but not very much. I've never had it shrink to the point where it cracks. It goes on fairly smooth. It is a solvent-based putty, so it does take a little while to cure and harden before you can sand it. But it's good for every plastic that I've ever used it on, whether it be this is an Italeri kit, a Tamiya kit. Obviously it'd be good for Dragon AFV Club. I'm going to be doing a Bronco kit, and undoubtedly I'll be using some of it on there, so I haven't had a problem with it sticking or with compatibility issues or anything. Takes paint really well. Really good basic hobby putty. You can use super glue as a putty as well, as a filler. It works very well, especially if you use something like a setting agent. And, this is Instaset. There's other brands like Zap-A-Gap or Flash. And basically what they do is they force cure the super glue so it cures like now. Generates a lot of heat doing that, so don't have it on your fingers when you do that. But you can do it. I don't recommend it in a lot of cases, because this stuff is really, really hard in comparison to regular putty. Very difficult to sand, takes a lot of time. You'll go through sanding sticks or belts like you wouldn't believe trying to get this stuff off, but it works. Used in certain applications, it's awesome to use, especially like the putty will work with resin. This will work way better. You don't have to worry about this stuff chipping out with the resin, because it doesn't dissolve the resin, it doesn't grab in, whereas this will stick. Another thing for methyl ethyl ketone you can do is you can use it to make putty. So what I've done here, and this stuff needs a little bit more MEK thrown into it, is you take some liquid MEK and you cut up some of your sprues, some of your empty sprues. You just snip them up and you mix it up. Oh, this is really thick. Normally this would be like regular putty. And you put this stuff on and you can paint it on. And the great thing is this is just liquid plastic. So this will go on, fill in a seam. It sands just like plastic. because it is. It takes paint just like plastic because it is. Once the MEK is gone out of the system, once it evaporates and the plastic itself hardens up, same amount of time as putty, you treat it just like putty. It works just like putty. It doesn't shrink. As long as you're not really stirring the crap out of it and getting a lot of air bubbles in it, you won't have any air bubbles in your seams because of it, where you might have it with, depending on the putty. I don't see that with Tamai. I see that a lot with Squadron and some of the other brands. But that's a really good, I really like using this if I'm not in too much of a hurry. But that works really, really well for that. Now, application tools. I actually have a little putty knife. I'm not sure what this was in the artist world, but I've been using this, like from a teenager. I've had this forever. Has a flat portion, has a sharp portion. I usually use this end. If your putty, like I forgot to wipe the putty off of this, I can just soak this in MEK or acetone or regular plastic thinner, take that off, and it'll be fine. Oh, that's another thing. If this stuff hardens, you can actually re-liquefy it with testers. Works really well that way. For sanding, once you get all of that done, sanding, you can go and buy these. This is made by X-Acto. There's other brands out there. It's just a rotating sanding belt. So you can sand, and then once this piece of sandpaper gets worn out, you can just rotate it, sand some more. Oh, that's worn out. Rotate it. Doesn't wear out that quickly, especially if you wet sand. That's why we have our nice container of dihydrogen monoxide or tap water. Wet sanding will extend the life of the sanding grit and give you a better finish on the part, but it's messy. You have to keep a tissue to clean it up. And then when this whole belt is totally worn out, you can just press the spring in, take the belt off, get a new belt, and just simply reinstall. Maybe it's not so simple. Simply reinstall, and you're good to go. And they come in different grits. Some people have multiples of these. These are really nice because you can get into really tight corners. You can sand sideways with it. It's a lot easier than taking a big 8.5 by 11 sheet of sandpaper and tearing it up and using it on toothpicks and bits of wood that you carve or bits of plastic. Although sometimes you have to get into certain areas. But much more advantageous is just regular sanding sticks that you get at the cosmetics counter. Ladies know all about these, use them on their nails for years. They come in a variety of grits. There's typically a different grit on one side than the other. This is a fine and a medium. I've got one that's actually a very coarse and almost a polish. I've got another one buried in here somewhere there that is a polish. It'll actually polish plastic to almost a glass smoothness. So these are really inexpensive. You can get these for like usually I pick them up when they're on sale for like 2 or 3 for $1 kind of thing. And again, you wet sand with them and they work awesome. You never have a problem with them. Once you got all of that stuff done, some other tools you don't necessarily need to have but can be really advantageous. As I said, a pair of side cutters. This is, I don't even know what brand this is. They're pretty chewed up. I've been cutting actual wire with them and they're not very good quality, but they'd be fine for plastic. These actually came in a set of different types of pliers. This one's got a rounded end. This one's more flat and pointed. This one's just straight flat. And this one's got round ends. These all have different uses for bending wire and bending plastics and the like. Something like this, if you can get those for at a dollar store type of thing, or you go to Home Depot or Canadian Tire when they have a good sale on, they'll do fine. If you want something that's made more specifically for modeling, and they do sell these at the hobby stores, you can get sprue cutters. These come under a variety of brands. Xuron, this is an Exelite or Exelite. This I picked up in an electronics shop. They're $10. You take care of them, they'll last you decades. Really, you don't have to do too much to them. Don't cut metal with them, just cut plastic. Maybe soft electrical wire for if you're doing grab handles later on. and they'll last you a long time. If you're doing something like photo etch, you might want to pick up, these are a set of Xuron, these are actual photo etch scissors. They probably have some use in the actual electrical world, but Xuron sell them as photo etch scissors. Tweezers. I've got a huge selection of tweezers I've collected over the years. I really like these. These are a non-magnetic stainless. Very pointy. You can stab yourself really badly with these. But I've also picked up, there was a set, I think it was made by Excel. Comes with like self-closing tweezers, good for holding parts while you have to manipulate them. There's some very long tweezers, don't really use these for much. Decal tweezers, these come in quite handy. Angled tweezers. Another long set of self-closing tweezers. And some pointed tweezers. I'm pretty sure those all came in a set together. These ones I think I picked up at a medical supply place. But a decent set of tweezers, and again, yeah, you can pick these up even at the cosmetics counter. Again, pointy ones maybe not so much, but you can pick up a cheap pair, and if you have a good file, you can just file them down to this, no problem. You can reprofile your stuff as much as you want to serve your purposes. A decent set of scissors to cut your decals. I mean, it can be dollar store scissors. I happen to use a set of medical shears that I'd picked up at a surplus place. We're not going to get too much into doing the into painting and that until later. But for tools, that is really bare bones basic stuff. I mean, there's a few other things you'll probably see me use over the years, different clamps, things like these helping hands clamps. I've got a couple of sets of these. One has a magnifier on it. These come out just simple alligator clips. I've used other clamps like alligator clips on sticks, and then I stick these into like floral foam to hold them in place, or I have chunks of 2x4s with holes drilled in. The ever-present clothespin, these things are indispensable. The one I'm grabbing here is actually on one of my work lamps because it gets very, very hot. It's an incandescent bulb, so it gets very warm. So I use that when I have to manipulate that around. I've got vices, I've got all kinds of tools I can show you later on as they come through and expose you a bit more to different levels of building. And the next video we're going to do is the starting video of our Leopard 2 by Italeri, very old kit. Very good kit for its day, though, all considering the price that it was at when it came out and whatnot. And we'll get on that in our next chapter. Thank you very much for watching.